You're not going to believe this, but for nearly 20 years, the US government had a top-secret program dedicated to training psychic spies. No, this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a declassified fact. And today, we're prying open their official training manual to see just how they tried to turn the human mind into a weapon.
The whole project was built around one mind-bending concept: remote viewing. And this right here, this is the official clinical definition they came up with at Stanford. It's a very dry way of saying they were trying to see things with their minds no matter how far away or even what point in time.
And let's be super clear here. We're not talking about some fringe group with crystal balls and tarot cards. Oh no. This was a structured, supposedly repeatable system that the military called Coordinate Remote Viewing, or CRV for short. They truly believed it was a skill you could teach, practice, and perfect.
So how in the world do we know all these crazy details? Well, it's all because of this document. A manual that was never meant for you or me to see, but was written to preserve this strange, secret art for future spies.
You know, what's so wild about this manual is its almost ghost-like status. It was printed by the Defense Intelligence Agency back in '86, but they made so few copies, less than 30, that it never even got an official document number. And its author made it very clear. This wasn't a how-to guide. It was a time capsule, meant to preserve the unique methods of the guy who developed it, Ingo Swann.
Okay, let's get into the really weird stuff. The theory behind how any of this was even supposed to work. This is the framework they had to create to try and explain the unexplainable. At the absolute center of it all was this idea they called the Matrix. Yep, long before the movie. In their minds, it was this massive, invisible library of everything. Like a cosmic hard drive that holds all the information about every person, place, and thing that has ever existed or ever will exist.
So if the Matrix is the giant server in the sky, then the signal line is the Wi-Fi. It's this theoretical wave, kind of like a radio signal, that's constantly broadcasting information from the Matrix. The entire goal of a remote viewer was to just tune their mind to the right frequency and start decoding that data.
But here was the single biggest problem, and this slide just lays it out perfectly. The human brain hates a mystery. So when a raw psychic signal comes in, like just a flash of metal and angles, the conscious brain instantly tries to fill in the blanks. It screams, "Oh, I know, it's a sports stadium." That's the trap. That mental noise was the enemy, and they even had a name for it: analytic overlay, or AOL. The entire training was about learning to shut that part of your brain up and just listen. So to fight that mental noise, they developed this incredibly rigid 6-stage system. You had to start big and vague, just basic shapes like land or water. Then you'd move to sensory stuff like smells or colors. Only then could you start describing dimensions like a building. By stage 4, you might get a feeling like something feels military. Stage 5, you could narrow that down to, say, a tank factory. And the final stage? Drawing and building actual 3D models of the target, all from that signal. Okay, but who on earth could actually do this? I mean, this process sounds impossibly disciplined. It's all very theoretical, so let's make it real. Let's look at the guy the Army considered its first and its best psychic spy.
His name was Joseph McMoneagle. Officially, he was a decorated U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer. But on the inside, at Fort Meade, he had a different title: Remote Viewer Number 1. He was their living proof of concept, the star pupil of this whole crazy endeavor. And McMoneagle himself just perfectly summed up the total paradox of the program. He said that intelligence agencies were desperate for the info they could provide, but the stigma, the ridicule factor, was so huge that nobody wanted to be seen anywhere near it. It was the secret weapon nobody wanted to admit they had.
So you gotta ask, right? Was this guy legit? Well, his own reported accuracy swung wildly, from as low as 5% to as high as 95%. And while he was a prized asset, he also made some claims that were pretty out there. He once predicted we'd all stop wearing clothes and just use temporary tattoos. And he insisted that humans evolved from creatures that were basically sea otters. He also famously said that he thought 98% of other psychics were total kooks.
So if this was such a top-secret program, with a star spy making these wild claims, how is it that we're sitting here looking at his training manual? Well, the story of how it got out is almost as strange as the program itself.
Check out this timeline. The manual gets secretly printed in '86. Then, in '95, the whole Stargate project gets shut down and declassified. But the manual itself, it doesn't actually surface until 3 years later, in 1998, when it just appears on a website for anyone to download.
And here's the kicker. The manual's own author, a guy named Paul Smith, was actually okay with it getting out. Why? Because once the program was declassified, all these self-proclaimed psychic gurus popped up, charging a ton of money to teach the secret military method. Smith hoped that by releasing the actual document, he could expose what he called all the chicanery and foolishness from people who were twisting his work.
The person who finally published it was P.J. Ganeer, who uploaded the whole thing to her website, FireDocs. With just a few clicks, she blew the lid off a secret that had been kept for more than a decade, making it available to literally anyone with a dial-up connection back then.
And her motivation was really powerful. She said she wanted to fight back against what she saw as a truly frightening cultism that was growing around these secret techniques. People were being charged insane amounts of money and getting sucked into these weird controlling groups. She figured if the source material is free for everyone, it loses its power to be exploited.
And that's where all of this leaves us. We have the declassified documents, we have the bizarre theories, we have the words of the spies themselves. And you have to wonder, was this a genuine, misunderstood secret weapon that actually worked sometimes? Or was it just an incredibly elaborate and expensive delusion that the government funded for 20 years? The manual is out there, but what it represents, a key to unlocking the mind, or a monument to government folly? Well, that's something you'll have to decide for yourself.